Welcome to DualShock, the Brotherhood of Geeks PlayStation Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Brett J. Rasmussen, and over here come my other co-host. Yeah! What's up?
What's up?
What's going on, man? What's going on?
It's been a long time with Fallout 76.
Oh, wow. You still?
Yeah.
Okay. I have no problem with that.
I know, surprising. I'm one of the few defenders of that game, but that's really what I've been focusing on right now. So, but I mean, I guess you can kind of launch into what you've been playing as well too.
Okay, well, yeah. So I just did an unboxing for the Darksiders 3 Apocalypse Edition.
Ridiculous $400.
Oh yeah,
I saw that. Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie, like $400, like that is pretty much for the most diehard of Darksiders fan, and like
I didn't even know there were diehard Darksiders.
Again, for me personally, it's one of my favorite franchises because it's pretty much like God of War and like other action adventure games.
Is it like Zelda kind of?
Yeah, like
Dungeon Explorer. I played the first one.
Yeah,
so, it's interesting genre mashup. I mean, I guess so.
And I love the lore about it, and I love the art style. And like as I said before in the unboxing, the statues are gorgeous. Which go ahead and check out that video if you want to see all that's in it. But I've been playing Darksiders 3. I've been doing that. I've been playing a few other things. I've been playing like Red Dead 2. I've been testing out the Red Dead online. Red Dead,
because that just started up, right? Okay,
that's up in line. Which
it's not tickling your fancy so far.
It's I don't know.
Well, you're not exactly like.
I mean, it's a beta. So the whole thing is that it's a beta.
Well, so are you.
You're funny.
But I mean, you're not really like a GTA Online.
No, I don't really like playing online games like that. So like I tried it out, and it's not bad, but like it has its problems, and it really feels more like a beta. And like the weird thing is that the microtransactions are active, so there's problems with Red Dead Online, but the microtransactions are...
At least those microtransactions are working.
Oh yeah, because you gotta have those.
Very curious how those are always the one thing that never breaks on a game.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, which
if only you could get that microtransaction team to work on the rest of the game.
I know.
It's like the let's make the whole airplane out of the black box. If that's the only thing that survives, right?
Yeah, and then if you can make the plane out of the black box, you'll be fine. But yeah, so like I've kind of tested the waters on that, but really I've been kind of playing Darksiders 3 and a few other games like that. So it's kind of been rounding up the rest of the year to kind of like refresh my memory. I'm like, all right, what games did I enjoy? What was this? What was that? Blah, 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 blah. So it's been like that.
I'll be honest. I mean, this has been a real challenge coming up with a list of any games I enjoyed. I mean, really, I mean, it's kind of a small list for me. I mean, there's not much on here that I really thought was worth picking up right away. I mean, there's plenty of decent games. I played a lot of the big games that came out this year. But I don't think any of them were really worth, maybe pick them up at a deep discount, but none of them were like, very few of them were like day one must buy amazing. So, I mean, it was actually a challenge. I had to go through Wikipedia and look like game by game and just like, it was tough.
Yeah.
So what was it like for you? I mean,
yeah. So what Spectre is talking about is that we're going to actually spend this whole episode talking about our top 10 games of the year. These are not in order of best to worst or anything like that. These are not in order. But what Spectre's talking about...
Presumably they get that from the title, too. Presumably.
Of course. But we're going to be kind of putting together our list of the top 10 games of 2018. And then later we're going to come back after the Game Awards, and we're going to give our own Game of the Year. We're going to discuss the Game Awards, so on and so forth. But do we want to go ahead and begin with the list? Then?
Let's dive
All
right in. Yeah.
So Spectre.
And for full disclosure here, I mean, really, honestly, I'm not going to come up with a game that I don't think should be on the list. So I only came up with about 4. I mean, I handed it off to you to come up with another one because
that's fine.
Like, that's really all I could come up with. I mean, it's... I just didn't want to throw a game.
No, no, that's fine.
So these are 4 that I genuinely think were worth picking up.
Okay.
One of them is going to be very controversial, I know. But the other three, probably not so much. So,
Okay.
Let's start off with one that I know you and I were both very fond of.
Yes.
I know it was the highlight of E3, not this year, but last
2016.
year. 2017.
Well, both of them. Like for me, it was 2016 when they announced it, and then 2017.
I thought it was announced in 2017.
No, 2016, because that was the same year they announced Spider-Man.
We're talking about Shadow of Colossus, right?
Oh no! I thought you were talking about something else.
I'm like, wait a minute! Like I would have remembered that from 2016.
I'm aware.
What are you talking about? So yeah, no. Shadow of the Colossus. I think something that we can
Oh yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
You know, it's and really, I'm always hesitant to put remakes, remasters, re-releases. There was actually a Castlevania re-release not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to put that on the list.
For
me, the arbitrary rules I put on myself is for a re-release to be put on the list, it has to be some kind of remaster where the game has, substantially changed. It's improved in some way.
Yeah,
it's different from the original product. Essentially, that was released. It can't just be a port. Essentially,
of course.
So, Shadow of Colossus is not a port. It's the enhanced HD remake of the classic PlayStation 2 classic from Team Ico.
Mm-hmm.
It was like I say, it was the only thing that really excited me from E3 2017. It
was
really
yeah,
blew me up.
I forgot about that. But like, really, what makes it even better is that the graphics of Shadow of Colossus on the PS4 have actually been redone. So when they remastered it from the PS2 to the PS3, it was kind of just like, all right, 60 frames per second, 1080p, bam, it looks prettier.
Yeah.
But like this one, they like graphically redid everything.
It's a Crash Insane Trilogy style / Spyro style remaster.
Yeah,
where the graphics have been the textures have been rebuilt from the ground up.
Mm-hmm.
It's a gorgeous game.
Oh my god!
Plays better than it ever has before. I mean, just to beyond the graphical improvements, they kind of enhance the controls a little bit. They improve that aspect of it because the controls are a little clunky, admittedly, when you go back and play the original. They didn't quite figure that out back in the PS2 era about what works and what doesn't for controlling in a 3D environment. So they kind of improved that a little bit. Really, I mean, even the trophies were better in this one. Really everything about this was a fantastic release of a classic game, easily in my top 5 of the PlayStation 2 generation.
Oh yeah.
So I was delighted to see this. I hope they do more and more remasters. We already know we're getting a Medieval remaster as well too.
Spyro Reignited trilogy just came out.
That just came out. I don't think Shadow of Colossus is a controversial choice at all. I think it definitely deserves to be in a top 10.
No.
So that's my first one out of the gate. Shadow of Colossus. I guess what is there? I can't think of much else to say about it. Other than
it's a fantastic game from the PS2 era that has been redone graphically 2 times, and like this is honestly the best iteration, and it has some newer stuff in it, like Easter eggs for Last Guardian and so on and so forth.
And I'll say here's one other thing I'll say. I think it holds up really well.
Oh yeah,
it's an older game now. It's like what, 13 years old at least now. It's hard to believe it's that old now. But I think it holds up pretty well. The story is very simplistic. It's like a fairy tale, but it's very moving in a lot of ways. It's very emotional. Some of the choices they made in the design of that game are still kind of, it's something you don't really see too much. The idea, the game is essentially a boss rush mode where you're fighting against a succession of bosses. There's no fodder, cannon fodder enemies in between.
The only enemies in the game are the Colossus themselves.
Exactly, which was a very interesting kind of controversial design choice at the time. But I think it holds up really well, especially with the new modernized controls schemes they have for it. It looks absolutely gorgeous. It doesn't look like a PS2 game anymore. It looks like a PS4 game.
No. Oh man, I love it. It's gorgeous.
I'd say it's definitely a reason to consider having a PS4. It's the only way you can touch it.
So
it's a fantastic game though. Easily deserves to be in the top 10.
I agree. For my next pick, so back in January of 2018, it was very, very early. And there was one game that came out that really took a lot of people by surprise, unless you were a fan of this game. Monster Hunter World. this game kind of came out, and everyone who was a fan of Monster Hunter picked up the game. For me personally, a lot of my friends are fans of the Monster Hunter like franchise, and they all picked up the game, and they were like, "Oh, Brett, come on, man, you got to pick up this game. This game is really fun. It's easy to get back, easy to get into." And I'm like, "All right, fine. I'll go ahead and pick it up. I'll play it." And mind you, I'm not a fan of those like always online, like MMO light kind of games. I like my single player
Playing with friends, stuff like that.
Yeah, of course, because I don't like doing that. But but I went ahead and started playing this game, and the controls in Monster Hunter World are so very easy to pick up. It starts you off right into the action where like a big, huge like monster is already attacking your ship and everything. And when you start playing the game, you can choose different weapons from dual blades to bowgun to sword and shield to insect glaive, which has become my personal favorite weapon in the game. And they're different builds. And the whole premise of the game is that you fight monsters, you kill monsters, you get their scales and you get their skins, and you make armor and weapons out of it, and you just continue the cycle over and over and over again. I didn't think that I would actually be playing that game for as long as I did. I played that game for months, and I still, to this day, go back into Monster Hunter World every so often when there's like the winter event or the fall event or whatever it would be. And what really was awesome about this game is that they always did like cross promotion. So there was a Street Fighter cross promotion. So you had to do a specific mission, and if you beat the mission,
didn't they do a Power Rangers one too?
No,
okay.
no.
I thought they did.
That would be rad.
I know they did a Final Fantasy one.
They've done Final Fantasy, Mega Man, Devil May Cry, and then on PlayStation they did Horizon Zero Dawn.
Okay,
that was like within launch they did Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yeah, I mean, it's I know you've sunk a lot of hours into that.
Oh
game.
yeah,
I've seen you play it a lot. I mean, for me, I gave Monster Hunter the series, plenty of opportunities. I think the last one I played was like the Wii U Monster Hunter 3 or something like that, and it wasn't for me. I mean, for lack of a better term, it's very Japanese. It's very much a number crunchy type of game. It's very grindy, as opposed to what a more Western RPG is like, where it's more so about role playing a character or maybe player versus player interaction, things like that. In general, I guess you could say more I guess Asian massive multiplayer games tend to focus more so on stat and number crunching and things like that, grinding a lot, crafting and things like that. That's usually kind of the least appealing aspects of an MMO for myself personally. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's something I could appreciate more if I was playing it with friends. But then again, every game is better with friends, I guess, right? I mean, right? So
I mean, I get it, but like, I was absolutely surprised. And then the best part about it is, as I said, I actually like playing games like on my own because I like to envelop myself in the game world.
You like
that's there. What? What are you talking about? Shut up, Spectre. Shut up. The best part about it, and this is why I absolutely adore this game, is that you can actually play Monster Hunter World by yourself. You can be in offline mode or online, and you can go ahead and like hunt down monsters. And when you're by yourself, the monster's like health and attack and everything is created for the single player. But if you add more people in, then the health and their stats pretty much become is calculated for all of the players.
So it scales to
it scales to
players,
your which is fantastic. So like I could go ahead and fight like Yana or a Rathalos by myself. But if I wanted to go ahead and play with friends, I could like all of us could fight that.
And that's a good feature to have for an MMO like kind of style game. I mean, the games have had that a lot. I mean, it goes back to Diablo 2 had that as well too. That kind of same idea. So yeah, I mean, like it's obviously a game that was more your thing, but I mean, something that you got a lot of enjoyment out of. a lot of playtime out of. Obviously,
Oh yeah,
you played a lot.
Oh yeah, like
I remember for like the first part of the year, like that's all I saw you play.
Oh, that was all I played. Like,
like
and I was like, there were other games that came out that like around that time that I wanted to play, but like I didn't, like I never stopped because there was always new content coming out. And the best part about it is that these fall and winter events and all so on and so forth, they always have something new. So you can, like, if you've been playing Monster Hunter up until this time, there's always something new for you to get. But if you've like taken a break from Monster Hunter and you didn't finish those, like, the crossover missions, like with Devil May Cry, like you wanted to get the Devil May Dante's like skin, like the Dante skin, or get his sword, you can still do that. Or if you want to do the Final Fantasy event, you can still do that. That's what I really do like, is that when they do these special like fall and winter events, they pretty much give you everything. You not only do you get the new stuff, you also get all of the old stuff if you want to go back and do that, which I absolutely adore. I love that. And it's you can play to your play style, which is fantastic. And that's honestly the best way for like an MMO like kind of game. I love it. It's fantastic. So yeah.
There you go. Well, next one on my list, admittedly, this is the one I could probably talk about the least, just because it's so new. It's literally only like 3 weeks old, not even. And I've been kind of absorbed with another game that I'm going to mention, so I only have so much time. I'm sorry.
I get you.
But I will say it is a series that is very near and dear to my heart. I've enjoyed it going all the way back to the PS2, and that would be, of course, Hitman. Hitman 2 in this case.
Oh, okay.
Just released very recently, a follow-up to 2016's Hitman, which itself was kind of sort of I guess you could call it a reboot or a reimagining of Hitman after the what's been called Hitman Abomination, aka Hitman Absolution from the PS3 era. We have nicknames for it.
Oh wow! Okay,
but that was by far the lowest point. Anyone that's played the games, Hitman Absolution on PS3 was the lowest point in the series.
Really?
Yeah, they less said about it, the better. Maybe I'll do a retrospective on Hitman eventually, do the whole series. We can talk about that together.
Okay.
But essentially, that was the low point of the series, and they brought it back. IO Interactive, they licked their wounds. They came back in 2016 with a great experience with Hitman 2016.
Yeah.
And so far, like I said, barely touched this one, so I can't really say much about it yet. So far, so good. Looks like it's basically Hitman 2016, but just better. They've actually reimagined some of the missions, essentially, and some missions are sort of sequels, you could say, in some ways. Spiritually to missions that were in the 2016 game.
Oh, wow.
Just a fantastic series. And really, it's kind of a Hitman is, at its core, it's a stealth game. It's a series you don't really, it's a type of genre, I guess you could say, that you don't really see much of anymore.
Yeah.
There's very few games that are kind of it's kind of a niche, essentially.
You're talking about like the straight up and down like stealth
games that focus on stealth. That's the main key mechanic, the genre of the game.
Yeah.
There's very.
You're not talking about like action stealth like Assassin's Creed, because that's not stealth.
That's not. Exactly. I'm talking more so like Thief, or I guess you could say maybe Deus Ex is kind of like that. It's one of the play styles you can choose in that game. Stuff like that. Maybe Dishonored we could say as well. She would definitely be in the stealth category. Not Metal Gear Solid.
That is great.
That would be more on the, I would say, action stealth, Assassin's Creed genre.
I'm gonna go bring in someone to go ahead and debate with you for that.
I'm sure you could.
We'll go ahead and leave that for another time.
But yeah, in summary with Hitman, what's great about the series is the stealth matters in that game because it is not only does the game punish you severely if you fail, essentially, but it kind of rewards sort of like your style, I guess you could say. It's sort of it's in a funny way, it kind of turns murder into like an art form of sorts. It's about Hitman's always been about not just stealth and sneaking through and completing the mission. It's about doing it in a stylistic, creative way, essentially. So that's it's a very special niche genre that no other game really does. Kind of what Hitman does. So I think it's should be on the list.
Yeah, no, like I actually went ahead and played Hitman 2016, and I went ahead and tried my hand at it, and I'm like, oh,
I didn't know you actually played 2016.
Yeah, I did.
Oh,
I did. I tested my hand in it, and I'm pretty sure that like the hardcore stealth games are not my.
Let's say that's not really your genre. I mean,
no, it's not. But like,
although weirdly, I mean, Assassin's Creed's like your favorite game.
Oh, it's my favorite. But again, that's action stealth. It's still an action adventure game with stealth elements in it. Where this is a stealth game with
it's a stealth game.
Yeah. So like. And I played like Hitman 2016, and it definitely is fun. It might be because I don't have the patience for it, or like I'm not as crafty with it. Maybe I'm not entirely sure. Because I've heard such good things about that game, and I wanted to go ahead and play it. And like when I started, I was like, "Oh, okay, I get it, okay." And then going through, like you can just go. You can do it like this, you can do it like that, you can do it, you can go ahead and like stomp his head in and then throw him into the garbage can, or you can go ahead and snipe him from far away, but in order to snipe him you have to distract this guy, I
think you're picking up on something there too, why this is kind of a niche genre, because like you said, it is the patience factor. Stealth games like Hitman, they aren't afraid to let you screw up and screw up royally.
And when I screwed up royally, like, I don't know what to do.
And
fight you.
And that can be frustrating. But I mean, and sometimes though, I mean, you despite a major screw up, you can still pull it off.
Oh yeah,
those are usually the most memorable moments of the
game.
Okay. I missed the shot, but I somehow survived and I got through and I killed him the other way or whatever.
Yeah,
those stories essentially. That's
like, oh, he's right over there. Okay, does he see me? No. Okay, I'm gonna kill you.
They're tense experiences. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
and it's definitely a game that requires some degree of patience. It's a game where you can't just run through and spray and pray and hope.
Oh yeah.
It's so I think you're picking up on something there that kind of explains why it's a niche genre.
Yeah, and the reason why I can see why you chose Hitman 2 because it's more of Hitman 2016 with added features and added stuff to it. But what made Hitman 2016 so special is just the ability of choice and of how you can be stealthy, and then with Hitman 2, with how different it is. It looks really good. I will not lie. It definitely does look really good. But I can see why you chose that one.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, like I said, it's the game on my list that I played the least, so I need to put more time into it to really give it a full, honest review.
Yeah, so next on my list, so I played Monster Hunter World up until the release of this game. This game came out in I believe March or April of 2018. And it's Far Cry 5. The very, very polarizing game from Ubisoft, where pretty much there's a cult that has taken over Hope County in Montana, and you have to pretty much dismantle it. Far Cry 5 was so much fun. It was the thing is Far Cry has never been about the story or really with 3, but the game has become more about exploration and just kind of the amount of stuff you can do in blank place. Far Cry 4, you were in the Himalayas. Far Cry 3, you were in a tropical paradise. But there's always something really messed up in the place that you're in. And there's stealth elements to it. There's, it's always in first person. It's never in third person. And the amount of different things you can do was really, really good. And what I liked about Far Cry 5 is that by playing Far Cry 5, you can get into planes, you can get in cars, you can pretty much do anything and everything you can in that game. And then the story in the game is pretty much kind of there to just lead you through, but for me, the story of Far Cry 5 about, what's going on with this cult and why are they, what's going on, why are these people turning to this cult and everything, and it kind of kept me engaged throughout the whole game.
And that's important too, because it's one of the reasons why I'm not a fan of the Far Cry games. I mean, I played, 3, I played I didn't really touch 4, I guess. So I played 3, I played 2, I played a little bit of 1 back in the day, because I was interested in just from the the graphics at the time was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But I guess my key criticism of not just of this Far Cry, but of all Far Cry games, with maybe the exception of Blood Dragon. My criticism is that it's a very entertaining sandbox. It's a world that gives you a lot of shit to do, essentially. The problem is, very rarely do they actually give you a compelling narrative, a reason to actually be invested in this world that you're spending so much time in. And it's kind of an empty sandbox, I guess you could say. And that's just been my experience playing the game. Like I said, I couldn't tell you really anything that happened in Far Cry 3. I can barely remember Far Cry 2 other than the annoying disease mechanic of malaria in that game. So I couldn't really tell you about the story of these games. And this isn't a sin that's unique to Far Cry. It happens in so many different games. Infamous is guilty of this, I would say. Prototype was.
I'll defend you on Infamous.
I'll
fight you on Infamous.
I'll fight you, yeah. So, there's open world sandbox games, and I think they rely on just they throw so much shit in lists of things to do for you. They don't bother with the actual. Why should I care? Where's the compelling narrative?
Yeah, and that's kind of become more of like Ubisoft's trope in all of their games. Like, there's just so much stuff just thrown into the sandbox. You have the waypoint towers, and you have different collectibles. You have this and that, just to kind of pad out time. Which it does have it, but what I liked, as I said, with the story, the main story, to keep you going, it kept me engaged, where I actually cared about what happened at the end. I cared about...
I'm glad that, like I said, at least you found a compelling narrative there. And for the record, I didn't play Far Cry 5, so maybe that's where they got it right. I don't know. But I guess this is the difference why... You're more an Ubisoft fan, and I'm a Bethesda fan. In a general sense, we'll say that, I guess. Because both Ubisoft and Bethesda, they both have this fixation with open world games. They both have a style, kind of a genre style.
Yeah.
The difference between the two, I would argue, you'd probably argue differently, of course, is that Bethesda has very large open worlds, very similar to Ubisoft games.
Yeah.
The difference, though, is that they fill their open worlds typically with a compelling story, narratives, memorable quests, and things to do in them beyond just your task of collect X number of items or this or that. There's characters and memorable things to do in these worlds. They feel like living, breathing worlds that way, and that's why I prefer those games, over Ubisoft's offerings.
Yeah, and for me, the reason why I like Ubisoft games, whether it's Watch Dogs 2 or Far Cry or Assassin's Creed, which is one of my favorite franchises, it's because of the story that's being told in the overarching story, of the game. The whole narrative from beginning to end is what I care about. That's why Assassin's Creed is one of my favorite franchises. And then what I like is, yes, you're not wrong. I do agree with you that I think Bethesda does a better job with integrating its side quests and its collectibles into its world, where sometimes, depending on which Ubisoft game, it just feels like they're just throwing stuff on a map in order to pad out the game. And I do feel like that.
That's actually an interesting comparison you made there too. I think Bethesda tends. When you look at the side quests, quote unquote, in a lot of Bethesda games, a lot of those can almost be like their own story narrative. Like join the Dark Brotherhood, for example, like in Skyrim or Oblivion. That's a very extensive quest chain. That could almost be like its own game. It takes a lot of time to go for that quest chain. We're talking 4, 5, 6 hours just for that one quest chain. That's just one guild you can join. So there's this big emphasis on side quests, where I think with Ubisoft games, it's not that they don't have side quests. It's just that they tend to be more one-off little things that you do that don't typically absorb all your time. It's trying to get you back to that main narrative.
No, and that I can see your point from that. It's with Ubisoft games, like with Far Cry 5, it is definitely... with with Far Cry 5, it definitely felt there were things in the game that I'm like, oh, it's just here to pad it out. But there are other side quests that did make sense with the story and that kind of thing. I think my whole point, my ending thought with Far Cry 5, and the reason why I would put this game on the list of top 10 games is because of just the amount of stuff you can do and just the ridiculousness of the things you can do in this game, along with the dark, twisted story that's kind of going throughout the whole game with the cult that's taken over this little hick town in Montana, this little Hope County. I think it's the duality of it, where you have the twisted story, which is the cult organization, the cult that's taken over Hope County, but you can go ahead and I have a rocket launcher, I'm going to go ahead and blow up that one dude. You can go ahead and do that. That's what I liked about it the most. It was fun. It was a game that was just pure fun with a really interesting story in it.
I kind of wish I know there's pre-release for Far Cry 5. There's a lot of kind of drummed up controversy.
Oh yeah.
This story. In a way though, I mean, essentially there was some arguments, comparisons being made that the story was going to focus on kind of I guess you could say an alt-right political group essentially.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wish that's the direction they would have gone in. I wish the game had some, I guess, teeth to it, and that it would have been controversial and taking a line, drawing a line in the sand and try to be a little bit more political, just because I think that would have made it even more, a little bit more memorable. I think what they ended up with, just based on, like I said, I haven't played the game, but just my understanding of it, it's kind of this milquetoasty thing. Like I said, you claim there's a lot of disturbing, the cult in some ways is very disturbing, but I wish it would have been just a little bit more iconoclastic.
No, I don't want to dig far too into this rabbit hole because this has already been said and done. But when before the game was coming out, or there were people talking about, what is happening? Is it about gun control and stuff like that, and or the alt-right, and then the game comes out and then people are mad that it doesn't have enough teeth or whatever, and honestly, it's a video game that you have this. You have the story that's been made that they wanted to tell, and you can do crazy dumb crap in the game. Far Cry has always been like that.
I think that's the raison d'etre of Far Cry is they want you to feel like you're in an action movie, and that first and foremost, that's what the game is about.
Yes.
Everything else is secondary to that goal.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
So
and again, it was a game that I played that I could just have fun with. But then there was a dark undertone story that definitely kept me intrigued throughout the whole game.
Definitely a long game. You get your money's worth out of it.
Yes.
Just like Monster Hunter.
Most definitely.
Well, before I go into my next pick, why don't you do, because like I said, I only have 4, you have 6. Why don't you do wrap up another one?
Sure. So, my next pick for Game of the Year is a game that has been... I've been very much looking forward to, and I've been defending. I've kind of talked about this a lot amongst my friends before this game came out. And the game is Detroit Become Human. This is the game that was made by Quantic Dream, which before this, they did Beyond Two Souls, which did not get good scores.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people liked it. There are very few people who liked it. And then the game before that, on the other game, was Heavy Rain. Critically renowned, very good storytelling, and that kind of thing. And
they're known for, David Cage is the director behind it. He did Indigo Prophecy before that.
Yes, on the PS2.
That was kind of their claim to fame.
Yep.
But yeah, this is a game I can kind of speak on a little more.
Yeah.
I didn't touch Far Cry. I didn't touch Monster Hunter. I did play it all the way through. I'm basically just a hair away from getting the platinum for Detroit, so I can speak intelligently on this game.
Okay, well then good.
I guess some of my thoughts right away. Then we'll get into
why. That's fine.
Actually, disregard that. I want to hear your thoughts.
Okay, well that's great.
Then I'll kind of give my reaction.
So that way you can go ahead and say whatever the crap you wants to me. All right. With Detroit Become Human, I will say this: Detroit Become Human, bar none, is the best Quantic Dream game, hands down, the best one. One of the things that a lot of people were worried about when this game came out was the quote-unquote David Cage isms in the game that you would see a lot of in like his past games. Like I saw there's like I saw on like Twitter or whatever. There's like a bingo, like hey, David Cage bingo, and like all the different isms that he would throw into every single one of his games. Is there some sort of random sex scene to happen? Check. Is there some sort of like supernatural thing that doesn't explain anything? Check. Like there's a bunch of stuff that like David Cage throws into his games that are David Cageisms. I personally don't mind them. I like them, but I do understand why people have gripes.
You love your sex scenes.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Okay. But the reason why I like Detroit Become Human is, of course, the narrative that it tells, and I know that's kind of been my big talking point with a lot of these games, but with Detroit Become Human, this is not about gameplay. Narrative is the main focus of this game. So if your narrative is bad, the game is bad. So with this, the reason why I would say this game is so good, and this is definitely the best Quantic Dream game to come from them, is because of how the narrative is told. You play as 3 different characters. You play as Connor, Marcus, and Kara. And all of their stories will interlink with each other as you go through the game. And it also has like the famous parts of their Quantic Dream games where whatever choices you make, it doesn't stop the game. You actually have to continue with the choices you made. If people die, they're dead. And I will definitely say my favorite like part of the game is Connor. Connor is my favorite character, and I think he's a lot of people's favorite character from out of the 3 you play. And just like the narrative of how it's told and how it's done, and just you get to see why these androids like feel the way they do, or the way they operate, and the relationship they have with other people in the game is just so well done. I'm very, very happy with this game. There's not a lot of David Cageisms too, which that's a big thing that that's a thing that people were talking about too. But with Detroit Become Human, I will definitely say that it's just the narrative, the way that it's told is so well done. And yes, there are some of the quick time events where you're just like washing dishes and stuff like that. But it adds atmosphere to the portion of the game. There are like I understand why that's a boring thing to do in a video game, but it's to show that like it's a way you can interact with the game. That's the best way I could probably describe that. I absolutely adore Detroit Become Human. I love this game.
Well, I'll say I agree with you that it's probably the best game from Quantic Dream so far. I mean, hands down, I'd say. I guess again the areas where I disagree with you. The reason why this game wouldn't come up on my list would be first of all, I'm hesitant to call games like this and things like Telltale games and Don't Nods, for their Life is Strange series. Mm-hmm. They're sort of quasi not really games.
They're just interactive movies.
They're interactive movies, and for me, a game, ideally, I mean, it has to have a perfect game for me would have a strong, compelling narrative mm-hmm. and gameplay that's well done, well realized, and the best of the best games have gameplay and a narrative that interwoven together, and they rely on each other. Where it's essentially it's not something that could be a movie. It has to be a video game, because otherwise the story wouldn't have the same impact or same mm-hmm. delivery to it. So this is a game where it's essentially all story and negligible, almost non-existent gameplay. It's almost like a choose your own adventure book where you're just a passive observer that maybe pulls a lever once in a while and like, okay, let's see how what would happen if we did this. Okay. That's sort of your interaction with the world. You're not really changing anything. In terms of the story itself and the characters, I did enjoy the characters. I enjoyed all three. Connor was probably my favorite. I think part of that's because I really am a fan of Clancy Brown, which is
Hank.
Hank,
his
partner in the game. Fantastic actor. He does a great performance in this game. So I like their relationship. I like their dynamic. I guess my criticism of the story, and I'm talking about the overall story, not the individual stories. The overall stories, I guess it felt kind of like, I mean, you take this far-flung future topic of, what will society look like when we have this radical, Pandora's box is open. How different will society be? It's sort of like, trying to, like we're back in like the 80s, and we're trying to imagine what society would be like before with the internet. Like we have no idea, how that would change everything essentially. And I guess I don't think the game really takes the narrative far enough. I think actually, the funny thing is, as I was playing through the game, there's a collectible in the game, the magazines you can pick up. And a lot of the magazines actually had some good ideas for stories. I remember one magazine was talking about how people weren't, men and women weren't really having relationships anymore because they would essentially, have a Android companion. I think it's a fascinating topic. We do a whole game on that. There's an undercurrent of automation. This idea that you'll have the androids replace jobs and things like that. And there's kind of the Luddites in there's sort of the Luddites in the game that kind of are resisting that to some degree. There's like a protest I think at one point early in the game. You saw that. I think that would be a fascinating topic to explore just in itself. I wish essentially the game boils down to this sort of this I guess we're human too type of thing. It's kind of been done with other Android stories. AI did that. I know about it. All these different stories have done that. But you could say Pinocchio was kind of like that. There's so many stories. There's so many stories that are about this kind of non-human life being recognized as human and fundamentally in some way. Even the recent Alien movies were like that in some ways. So I think it's a narrative that's really been explored pretty heavily. I guess I wish they would have taken something a little bit more, controversial or something just a little bit more unique, I guess, for the story. Because essentially what we have a sort of this buddy cop story which we've seen a million times before, and the only twist being that it's an android. We have this kind of liberation leader story with Marcus, and then Kara. I don't want to talk about spoilers, but there's something that happens in Kara's story towards the end of it. There's a revelation that I think really undermines the spirit of her story and her narrative.
I do.
I don't like that revelation.
I don't mind it. I don't mind that revelation, but I don't want to get far too into spoilers.
To make a comparison, let's say, with my favorite film of all time, Blade Runner, which is about the same topic actually, which this game kind of borrows from in some ways, about discovering essentially humanity and something that's supposed to be non-human, and the dynamic in that movie. I mean, it's like it should be about human interaction with a non-human, and that's what it should be about.
No, I get you.
But so I think they kind of flubbed that up a little bit. But overall, I guess to wrap up, to make my point, not a bad game. Like I said, I think this was much better than Beyond Two Souls.
Oh yeah,
and it's much better than Heavy Rain. Indigo Prophecy, I like the Indigo Prophecy. Kind of it's sort of fun, kind of guilty pleasure, I guess you could say. But I mean, I enjoyed. I'm curious to see what they do next. I guess I wish. My advice to Quantic Dream would just be like, okay, take some more risks.
I mean, I think this was definitely more. This was more of a game that you had that was more to get people with Quantic Dream, because Beyond Two Souls, like across the board, not a lot of people liked, and this had to be a game that I pretty much had to knock it out of the park for Quantic Dream.
So it had to be safer, I guess.
I guess, but I still think that they took risks with the story they were telling, but I don't think, for you personally, Spectre, I don't think they were the risks that you would have liked to see, because I know for you love that the Cyberpunk genre, like Blade Runner, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So they didn't kind of take the risk that you would have liked to see. But for me, I think it was they took risk with it, with how they did it, and then with the gameplay, with the amount of choices you can do is absolutely ridiculous when you're playing through it. It's fantastic. It's a fantastic game, and I definitely recommend it if you haven't played it. It is definitely worth your time. So yeah.
Well, back to me then, I guess.
There you go. Yes.
So here is my controversial choice.
Okay. Okay.
And I know I'm gonna get some hell for this. But I'm just trying to be as honest as I can.
Okay. What is this, Spectre?
I think in your top 10 for 2018, I think there should be a place on that list for Fallout 76.
Really?
Really, yes.
Okay.
I'm unironically saying that.
Okay. I can just hear the screams of just anger coming at you right now.
I know. I get it. I 100% I get it.
Why would you put this game on here? Why would you do that? That game sucks.
Yeah. Especially, I mean, it's the cultural zeitgeist has declared this game to be a colossal failure. I get it, and it's difficult to kind of go against the grain. I'm not going against the grain on this just to
go against the grain,
to be a contrarian. Yeah, yes. Exactly. No, I
genuinely defend yourself, Spectre, because I'm very much interested to see what you have to say about this.
Well, okay, and let me preface it by saying, of course, I do have a bias. I am definitely a Fallout fan. I acknowledge that.
But if you take your bias out,
even if I take my bias out, though, I still think you get your money's worth out of this game.
Okay.
And I'll talk about a few positive things about the game right away, actually, which not just myself, but most reviewers have picked up on.
Okay.
For one, the world itself, the world of Fallout 76, is actually very well realized in terms of just the aesthetics. I mean, it's an extremely large open world, much larger than what we saw in Fallout 4 or New Vegas or Fallout 3.
Okay.
More importantly than that, it's a very, in terms of its topography, it's a varied world. I mean, you have different areas to explore. Every one of them is unique and memorable in its own way in terms of its design. Mm-hmm. And really just in terms of its aesthetics, it kind of takes some risks. Instead of just being a drab wasteland, which is what you expect in Fallout, it has a lot of areas with a lot of color, with a lot of greenery, with a lot of different hues other than just your browns and beiges.
Yeah,
it has a very unique aesthetic to it, which you don't see in other Fallout games. So they did really well with that aspect of it. It's a gorgeous looking game.
Really? Because now, mind you, I will preface this right now. I have not played Fallout 76 at all, but from a lot of what people have been saying, or what I've been seeing in reviews, regardless, that kind of thing, is that it looks flat. It doesn't look gorgeous. This looks like
understanding the scale and scope of the world that you're in. Like I said, you have to compare this to almost like an MMO in terms of its design and map design and everything. I mean, it's not. It might not look as good as, like, let's say the world you'd see like in maybe something like a Horizon Zero Dawn, which is a beautiful world. I mean, very well crafted, extremely well designed in terms of its just in terms of its prettiness factor, essentially. But I mean, you have to understand that when you translate that into a multiplayer online game, there has to be some concessions because a server can only handle so much, and you can't have high resolution textures on everything, because that would make it pretty unstable, more unstable than it is. Yeah. So with all that in the back of your mind, and comparing this most importantly to other Fallout games, I mean, it's essentially it's an intermittent step, from Fallout 4. It's very similar in terms of its graphical style for Fallout 4, which you'd expect. It's the same engine essentially, but the difference being in terms of its design. That's the key difference in terms of its, it's like I said, the variety that you see in it. Everything, like I said, the map is large and memorable, and it has a lot of different locales that are very unique. So they did that really well. And alongside that, this is something I wasn't expecting actually. When it first launched, they actually have a wide variety of creatures to interact with.
Okay.
The game is populated by a quite a few. It's not just a bunch of reskinned Fallout 4 monsters. I mean, a lot of these monsters, and creatures and enemies that you face were in Fallout 4, but there's a lot of them that are actually unique to 76.
Yeah.
It's so they did it, and that's like these are things that not just myself but others have praised as well too. In terms of just looking at some of the positives of 76. So
I find it interesting because there's like again from what I've heard is I hear way more negatives than I do hear anything positive about this game. And you've been talking about how keep your expectations tempered because this is more of an MMO. The graphics in an MMO style kind of game look awesome, and then the amount of enemies are big. The world is massive, and it's very interesting. I just find it very interesting because I haven't heard that. I've been hearing more about.
Well, I've seen that in other reviews in terms of talking about the world itself. West Virginia as it's presented in this, and how it's like I said, it's in terms of its design, it's remarkable how they took some risks. They actually have some color in the world, and every area kind of feels unique and different in a lot of ways, which you couldn't really say about Fallout 4. Fallout 4 was basically one gigantic, wasteland of burnt down buildings and stuff like that. I mean, there wasn't really a lot of thing. There wasn't a lot of the color palette to that game was very basic, let's say, and that was true of Fallout 3 even more so, and of New Vegas to a large extent as well too. So they took some risks at least with that, and I think it paid off pretty well. It's a very memorable game world. Okay. So they did a good job of that. Same with the creatures and the design as well too. Getting into some of the more negative and controversial aspects of the game, of course, there's been a lot of complaints that it's buggy and glitchy, and of course it is. More so than your typical Bethesda game, and I think a big part of that is, of course, because it is an online experience. At the very least, the game is at least playable. It wasn't like a Battlefield 3 launch situation where the game literally was unplayable. You're going to have some stuttering, some freeze ups, some graphical glitches, harmless graphical glitches, things like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, in terms of overall judging it, I mean, I guess I've seen a lot of launches for online games. I've seen worse than this.
Okay.
But that's not to excuse this. I will acknowledge that is a problem with the game. That's something that they've been addressing. Like I said, the key difference to this is it is kind of a work in progress as well too.
Yeah, I mean, like even to this date, there have been multiple patches to bugs and everything, but like it's odd because with so the funny thing is that like a lot of people have been a lot of my friends have been saying like they're having a good time with it, but also I have a lot of friends who are saying they hate it. So it's very polarizing. Either you love it or you hate it. There is no in between.
Well, actually, I would say I kind of am an in between. Really? I don't love the game. And like I said, when I do eventually do a Fallout retrospective, if we do that, my argument will be that Fallout 3 was the high point, and then we went to New Vegas, and then we went to Fallout 4, and then now we're at Fallout 76. Okay. So we started up here, and we're down here now. But it wasn't like Fallout 3, Fallout 4, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 4, and then down to Fallout 76. Mm-hmm. This has been getting progressively worse. Okay. So I'm kind of in the middle of the road. There's a lot of things I like about the game, and there's some things I think that weren't so well done. But a lot of those things I think are being ironed out and fixed, like the bugginess, for example. Talking a little bit more about a couple other things on here right away. The story and main quest, this is the most common criticism I've seen of the game in terms of, it's the lack of the NPC involvement in the game really kind of takes you out of the main story. I'd agree with that to a large extent. I think what the game does very well at, though, is trying to leverage other methods of storytelling beyond just having an NPC talk at you for eons essentially. The game relies a lot more so on in some ways it almost feels like an older Fallout game because it gets a lot of things across through its audio logs, through its computer terminals, through its kind of the way it presents different environments essentially itself, and so it's does it always work? No, but it does have some memorable moments to the main campaign. But I'd say the campaign itself, the main story of the game, is probably its weakest element. I think you actually find some side quests or side missions in the game, which are a lot more entertaining than the main story itself.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the same time though, you can almost say that about Fallout 4 as well too. I mean, really the only main story that I enjoyed was New Vegas and Fallout 3.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's not always a home run essentially from
I get
that
you.
aspect of it. The base building part of it is, I mean, it's, what can I say? It's essentially the same as Fallout 4 in a lot of ways. So if you liked it in Fallout 4, you'll like it here. The only difference being that now you can build anywhere, essentially.
Yeah.
That's the primary difference. And that, I mean, it kind of works out, especially considering how it kind of needs to be that way, not just because it's an online game, but also, even if this was a single-player game, I think they would still let you do that. Because the world itself is so massive that you need to kind of have an extra waypoint to travel through, and it's good to be able to kind of pack up and move on because you can't there's some hubs in the game, but for the most part you're traveling around a lot, and the game world, like I said, is massive, so it's good to have that ability to kind of pack up and go, I guess you could say, especially with the nature of the end game, which involves nuking the world and stuff like that. So
which I've heard that, like, again, this is just what I heard. I've heard
what did you hear?
Is that there really is no end game. There really is, like, after you kind of beat the main story, it's like, okay, what do I do?
No, there's an end game. I mean, it's just as much of an end game as you'd see in Destiny or other games. I mean, there wasn't really much at launch for those games either.
Mm-hmm.
Go back to World of Warcraft when it first launched. There were no raids, there really or anything. I can't remember if Molten Core was even in World of Warcraft when it first launched. I mean, there really wasn't an end game exist for a lot of these online games when they first came out. But right now, I mean, it's the end game basically consists of going to nuke zones, fissure sites, and getting high level gear essentially, completing story quests, doing side missions, things like that. Essentially, that's the end game for now. But in the future, what we're going to have are essentially equivalent of raids. Essentially, we're going to have vaults opening in the future. There is end game coming within the next year or so.
Yeah.
So that's going to be kind of added, sort of like I said, it's been added to games like Destiny and things like that.
Yeah.
And presumably all that's going to be free. I haven't heard anything about that actually costing anything. So if that's true, then it actually has a leg up on a lot of other MMO games which charge you for all that shit.
Yep.
So so you have that aspect of it. Microtransactions. Every game has them nowadays.
Apparently.
Every game has them. Really, I mean, for this game though, I mean, I'd say they're pretty unobtrusive. I mean, they don't really,
which is good.
They don't really have any impact on the game itself. Of course, it's one thing that, like I said, that works flawlessly in the game is the microtransaction system.
Of course.
But I mean, they really, it's all just purely cosmetic. It doesn't impact your character in any real instrumental way.
Mm-hmm.
It's just basically buying extra skins and stupid shit like that, essentially. And the game actually is pretty generous overall, I will say, in terms of giving you free currency, essentially, just for completing challenges and stuff like that. I've actually purchased several things. I haven't put any real money into the game.
Yeah, but because of you progressing through the game, you've been able to.
Exactly, yeah. And that's really, I just treat it as another unlockable, essentially.
Yeah.
Combat gameplay, basically unchanged from Fallout 4, for better or for worse.
I heard that the VAT system is much rougher in this game than it is.
Well, the VAT system already was much worse in Fallout 4, and now this has just gotten even worse than that. Keep in mind, the VAT system in Fallout 4 was actually kind of real time as well too. It was just a slow-mo, essentially real time. Excuse me. So this one, it is by necessity, it is 100% real time. There's no slow-mo element to it because it's an online game.
Yeah.
It does have its purposes. It's basically used for in combat for acquiring critical hits, and for it does help with aiming at more difficult, smaller, skittery enemies that they're difficult to manually aim at. So it does have a purpose. It kind of works. I mean, it's not a fantastic system. I would much rather go back to what we had like in New Vegas or Fallout 3, but obviously that wouldn't work for a multiplayer game. So this is really kind of the best of what you could do. So I mean, it is what it is. Talked about that already. Talked about microtransactions already.
So you've probably heard all of the bad stuff about Fallout 76. That it's a broken game. That
I think a lot of it's overblown. A lot of it is it's coming from people that probably haven't played too much of it, have really not gotten into it too much, and actually played and progressed past certain points in the game. So I don't know. I question, how much these reviewers have actually put time into, how much time they've actually put into this experience. I'm like I said, I'm not saying it's a perfect game by any measure, but I'm saying it is and my recommendation for anyone that's interested in the game outside of a hardcore Fallout fan, which presumably has already purchased the game. My recommendation for everybody else would be to wait until maybe we'll say like February. After that, you're going to have we have 2 patches coming in December. We are probably going to have at least 2 or 3 more patches in between December and February.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of those patches address a lot of the main criticisms of the game. So by then it should be in a much more, I guess, more ideal state. Another thing, actually, I'll say praise of the game. The oh God, I'm just like dying now. This weather, I hate it. But what I'll say in praise of the game is the perk card system.
Okay.
While not perfect,
yeah.
I do have some criticism with it. I lament the loss of our ability to actually play as a character, is our ability to have a character that has strengths and weaknesses, not this really starting with Skyrim. In Bethesda games, you're just able to be a god at everything. You can be an expert archer, an expert fighter.
Yeah.
In Fallout, you can be amazing with heavy guns, and then I can switch to my pistol. I'm amazing with that.
Yeah.
I'm amazing with melee. It's boring. My character has no weaknesses. I don't like that. I'm not playing I'm not really playing a role playing game. I'm role playing as God essentially.
Yeah.
At least with 76 though, in a way, it's actually better than Fallout 4 because the perk card system. It only allows you to equip a certain number of cards at once. So right now, for example, my character is built to be really good with a shotgun. He can blow you away with a shotgun. Can't really do much with anything else.
Yeah.
Now, in theory, I could switch my cards around and shuffle the deck and change my spec, essentially. But at any one time, I'm only good at really one thing, or maybe 2 things, kind of.
Yeah.
So in a way, that's actually better than Fallout 4, because in Fallout 4, eventually you get to a high enough level, you're just a god at everything. You're just amazing. So, I mean, I know I went into a lot of detail, a lot of different things, kind of gave a mini review there in a way. But I think people aren't giving this game a fair shake. I think they see the Metacritic and they're like, oh, it's a turd. Fuck it, get rid of it. So it's. Like I said, I'm not saying it's a masterpiece. I'm not saying it's necessarily going to even be my pick for Game of the Year or anything like that. I'm just saying that if you're making a top 10 list of 2018, I think it is a game that you would get your money's worth out of. Especially, the longer we go on, the better the game's going to be, really. Because eventually we're going to have vaults opening. We're going to have all the bugs ironed out. I mean, they so far so good with Bethesda. They've been really communicative about the understanding that there's bugs, there's things that need to be fixed. So I think this game is it's in a good playable state right now. I think you do get entertainment out of it, but it's going to be even better, 6 months from now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm surprised that you would even choose Fallout 76. I probably wouldn't put it up there, but I mean, I think that's really up to your own opinion if you agree with Spectre or not. Just like. So pretty much your final words is that you would put Fallout 76 as one of the top 10 games because of what it is?
Because it's an entertaining experience. You do get a Fallout experience out of it. I mean, like I said, I got my money's worth out of it, definitely. I mean, I put 100 hours into it. I played for the main story. I played for a lot of the side story. I've had a lot of emergent fun in the game with the multiplayer.
Yep.
It's not it's not as bad as everyone's saying it is, I guess. I think people aren't giving it a fair shake. I think they're just being, just like they're casting this game out just because they saw the initial reviews and the Metacritic. It's like, okay, this is the trend now.
All right, yeah. I mean, that's very interesting. I will definitely. That's very interesting. I'm surprised that you would even go ahead and put that on the list. But hey, that's totally fine. I have no problem with that. All right, so with my next pick, this is pretty much a game that everyone, including myself, has been looking forward to, and it's Red Dead Redemption 2. Surprise, surprise. Of course, it's on the list.
I see. We go from an extremely controversial choice to a not at all
Of course! Surprise, surprise, Red Dead Redemption 2 is, of course, on this list. It is a game that everyone has been expecting, and honestly, it really is that good. are there some nitpicks? I wouldn't say problems because it's not a problem with how they built the game. So it's very realistic. The game is absolutely gorgeous, and it's very, very realistic. You feel like you're a cowboy during the time, and almost kind of to a hindrance to a little bit. Because sometimes when you're like on your horse and you're like on a chase, you'll accidentally like hit people, and then by doing that, your wanted meter will go up. Where like normally that would just be like, you would have to like run over people in order to do that. Where you're just like, you just like tap them and just like tapping
straight
them.
with that part.
But some other things, for instance, when you're skinning, when you go hunting and you skin animals, you're sitting there and you're gonna watch. Your character, you're gonna watch James, I believe it is. I can't remember.
You tell me, I haven't touched it yet.
No, remember there's a lot of stuff that's going on in my head, so I'm trying to be like, okay, what from here? Where he's pretty much just like skinning, the deer or whoever whatever. You were hunting.
So it's very realistic. It really gets you into the role of.
Oh yeah, like it's very realistic. Absolutely gorgeous game, and it is really fun. And I'm very, very happy with that. Rockstar put when it came out at launch. Here, only single player. We do not have online active. Play the single player, and that's a very good model because that way you got to experience the game itself, and then Red Dead Online is now active, so now people are playing that.
So they can focus more on that.
Yeah, so now you kind of get the full aspect of the full game instead of just going, oh, well, on to online I go, yeah! Like, you miss a whole portion of the game. Not saying people would do that. I think the Rockstar games are very much, you buy the Rockstar games for the single-player campaign, and then the online is kind of the bonus. And that's kind of the reason why you keep the, GTA 5 or now Red Dead 2. It's absolutely gorgeous and it's so ridiculously realistic, which is a good thing. And that was the whole point of this game. That was the whole point of Rockstar. That was Rockstar's goal for this game, was to be as realistic as it possibly could be. But sometimes I feel that it's sometimes a hindrance to the game because it sometimes doesn't feel like a video game because it's so realistic.
So some things are kind of unnecessarily tedious in the game.
Yeah, like as I said, when you go hunting, you're gonna watch him like he's gonna go ahead and skin the deer. Then he's gonna go ahead and put the skin into his pelt. And then he's gonna go ahead and put the carcass onto the horse. And then you have to go ahead and get onto the horse, and then you leave. Like it's like a whole 1 or 2 minutes of just him doing that.
Whereas in another game that might just be like a quick animation.
Yeah.
And you have deer meat in your
yeah, and just like, here it is.
Yeah.
Which I mean, again, they did their goal, and to some people, that's what they want. They want that, what would it be like being in
the verisimilitude of it and everything. Yeah.
But regardless, again, this is just a nitpick. This is just for me personally because I want to be enveloped into the world, and my God, we're going to be enveloped into that world. And the story's fantastic too.
I mean, I can really only comment on Red Dead Redemption, the original, because I haven't touched Red Dead 2 yet. I really enjoyed Red Dead 1, even though it's not really normally a genre. I'm not really into the kind of Grand Theft Auto style genre, which, I mean, let's be honest, this is kind of a Western Grand Theft Auto. But I really enjoyed the story for the first one. I enjoyed even the multiplayer is kind of fun. So I will eventually get into Red Dead 2 here, most likely. But yeah, I mean, I've heard nothing but just glorious praise. It's breaking every sales record. I mean, we knew this was going to be a big hit, but we weren't expecting it to be quite as big as it is. So I mean, it looks fantastic. Like I said, I'll get into it eventually as I'm done playing all my other stuff. So.
I know, I get you. And it's there's tons of games. Again, it's very top heavy at the end of the year with all these games that come out. So Red Dead 2 is definitely fantastic. It'll be very honestly, I'm pretty sure it's going to win Game of the Year at the Game Awards. Which I mean, rightfully so, but. There is one other game that I would like to see actually win, but we'll get there later.
Well, let's no time like the present. Let's get there. Now, that's actually.
Well, actually, I do have one more. Because you have 4, I have
don't.
6.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I do have one more before that because I believe I would say Monster Hunter World, Far Cry 5, Detroit Become Human, Red Dead 2. Oh, I believe
that's it. So next one for me.
Okay. So the next one, this is absolutely fantastic, and I love this game to death. And it is Marvel's Spider-Man. This game was so good. It goes ahead and gets you right into, like, when you start off the game, you get right on going, and the way that you maneuver through New York City is just so gratifying. There have been so many different Spider-Man games from the past, and with this one, you feel like Spider-Man. When you are, like, zipping and zagging all the way through New York, you are, like, flying over things, and just the way that you have to, like, maneuver yourself through New York is so gratifying. The combat is amazing, and then the story is fantastic. Oh my God, it's so good.
I mean, this is a game I actually did play, and we were going to do a review on it, but that never materialized. But anyways, regardless, so I can at least I have the benefit of being able to speak about the game intelligently right now. So I got the platinum on it, so I can talk about the whole thing. I will agree with you that it's a very it's a gorgeous looking game. It looks great. You know, New York is very well realized.
It's honestly, like, because I actually lived in New York for a few years, and, like, with how they
it's not quite 1-to-1, but it looks very it's very well done. In terms of the combat experience of the game, I did actually find that to be in a lot of ways, you know, better than the game that this is kind of, you know, aping in some ways, which is Batman, the Arkham series.
Yeah.
I actually think it does it a little bit better in terms of, you know, from a gameplay perspective. The combat felt smoother. It felt like I could chain combos together a little bit more easily, while not being like, at the same time, while not being like a hand holding, like, not, you know, challenging or difficult experience. It can be challenging at some points. So I thought the combat was handled really well. You already commented on the, you know, kind of the web slinging and just moving through the city itself. Just that act itself, it's been more perfectly realized than any other Spider-Man game I've played. Even better than the classic Spider-Man 2 movie game from the early 2000s. So that was really well done. I will disagree with you on the story element of it. I think they really did the best they could, all things considered. I mean, it has, you know, basically every major Spider-Man villain appear in some form throughout the game. So, the problem is, Spider-Man is not Batman. He's not. He doesn't have this entertaining, memorable rogues gallery of villains that you can, you know, readily. You know, I mean, just simple experiment. Go out and talk to, you know, anybody on the street and ask them about, you know, their favorite Spider-Man villain. I mean, they'd be lucky to name one villain, I think.
Yeah.
Your average normie could not name one villain. Whereas if you mention, okay, give me a Batman villain, and, you know, people will be firing off, you know, Joker and Penguin, all this, you know, they'd be Riddler, they'd be throwing all, you know, dozens of names at you, essentially. So, I mean, that's just the source material they're working with. That's not the fault of, you know, the game developer, but they did the best they could, I think, with what they had. One thing I will say is kind of an unforgivable design choice in the game, and where I'm not. It doesn't necessarily just exclude it from a top 10 list, I would say, but it's something that really irked me quite a bit while I was playing. It kept coming up over and over and over again. Was at several points in the game forces you to. It takes you out of Spider-Man in a fun, like I say, great gameplay experience of playing as Spider-Man, and it throws you into his milquetoast girlfriend, Mary Jane, and it throws you into
Miles Morales.
I couldn't even remember his name. So this Spider-Man fanboy kid. So it throws you into these characters, and it forces you into this awkward, painful, poorly done stealth sections of the game that are completely unforgivable. The pace grinds to a halt. They don't add anything to the story. I think it was just done as a way to pad the game, essentially. I think you could remove those sections of the game would be far superior because of it. And in fact, you could almost just straight remove them and not really have to even update the game it just would be better because of that in and of itself.
I mean, it added differentiation to the game. I mean,
I think there's enough differentiation to the gameplay just in terms of the activities they made.
I mean, I get it. Again, I enjoyed it.
Did you have fun playing those missions?
Yeah, actually, yeah.
I don't think you did. I think you're really stretching at this point. But yeah, like I said, not a terrible game. I will say, the difference in our bias here on this one. I am not at all a superhero fan. I don't really care for the Marvel universe or the DC or all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Whereas that's something that's much more dear to you. So we're coming at this from two very different perspectives. Oh, yeah. But I will say, and this is kind of a word of praise, I guess, for the game. Even as a non-fan of this superhero genre, I'm not a fan of Spider-Man. I was never into Spider-Man. Even as a non-fan, I did have an entertaining experience with the game. I would say it's worth picking up. Me personally, if you're a non-fan of superheroes, I wouldn't say get it at full price. But, I did have a good time with it. It was at least just as good as, like, an Infamous game.
It is honestly worth your time. I would buy this game right now. It is fantastic. I absolutely love it. And the ending, if you're a comic book fan, like, for me, the ending is absolutely amazing. I love that ending. I will not spoil it, because it's just too good. And, yeah, I love Marvel Spider-Man, and it is absolutely fantastic. It is, honestly, a must-buy. And I know that people bought PS4s just for that game. So, like, honestly, it is that good. It is honestly that good. So, yeah.
But on to what should be our final choice.
I believe so, yes.
So this one is, like I said, not at all controversial, I think, for either of us. It's something I think we both were immediately thinking of in our heads when we came up with a list. Probably the first one we both rolled down. And that would be, of course, God of War 2018.
Yes. Yes.
So I'll say, we actually did a full review of God of War at one point, 2018.
We've talked about this.
We talked about this. For me, I will say there was essentially three things I wanted from this game, and all three were achieved. One was I wanted the game to not be a complete reimagining. I wanted it to be in the spirit of God of War. I wanted to have the same fun gameplay. I wanted to essentially not forget that there were 6 other games.
Yeah,
essentially. Yeah. I didn't want it just to become total reboot, total redesign, essentially. So I wanted
because when they announced the game, they said Kratos is you're going to play as Kratos. So because of that, the past games should still exist.
Exactly. Yeah. So reverence to the past series. Mm-hmm. The second thing was the gameplay aspect of it. Like I said, I wanted it to be it should feel like a God of War game. I should feel powerful. I should feel the combat should feel meaty and heavy, just like God of War was. Yeah. So that was the second thing that was achieved as well. The last thing was I wanted there to be a future for this franchise. I wanted this to be a story that could branch off and lead into other things, which isn't necessarily an easy thing to do because, admittedly, at the end of God of War 3, they sort of wrote themselves into a corner. And
like that was kind of like the goal. They were like, oh, well, there's this the end question mark, but like. That was kind of the goal. Like, they told their story, and if that was the end, I would have been fine with that.
Yeah, I was satisfied with that ending. It was a controversial ending in a lot of ways, but I was satisfied with that ending.
Yeah.
And it showed me that there's a future for this. And by future for the franchise, I don't just mean like, let's explore this mythology now, or this mythology. What I mean by future is for the character of Kratos, that we've been following now for 6, now 7 games, main games. I wanted there to be some continued progression because a lot of people would claim that there wasn't really an arc for Kratos' character. I think we both would argue there was in the original games, and I wanted to see him progress even further to change even further, and that's exactly what happened in God of War 2018. There is a progression to his character, a clear change progression to his character. And it's going to be interesting. I want to see how this character evolves in future installments now. So, like I said, it got all three. It respected the franchise as it was. Yep. It preserved the fun, meaty, engaging gameplay. It actually improved on it in many ways. And it gives us something to hope for the future. And it has a a path forward for Kratos, essentially.
Yeah, God of War, like this was the game that I was the most looking forward to this whole year, and I've really like God of War 2018 is absolutely fantastic. Some people were saying like, oh, because now it's instead of it being like an arcade action adventure game, because like you would just do combos in the original ones, where this is now the camera's in third person and it follows you instead of like this, like you have this big huge set piece,
like fixed camera.
Yeah, and this was very, very different, and fans of God of War were very worried. I was like, this is going to be good regardless. This is like, I look forward to this. And like when you start picking up the game, like the game within that tutorial, when you're like, when the game starts off and you're going to like chop down a tree, you're actually learning how to play the game. It says press R1 to chop down the tree. That's your attack button. And the more and more you continue through this, like the beginning of the game is a bit long, but the whole beginning part of the game is actually telling you how this game is going to operate, because then there's a boss fight that happens. That one boss fight teaches you how to, in order to beat him, that's how you're going to play the whole game. Like how you dodge and how you attack and that kind of stuff, and counter and everything like that. That one boss fight, the beginning boss fight, is going to teach you how
it's
you
a great
fight.
tutorial. It advances the story, but it's also a tutorial.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like, oh, we're going to do it. It's a tutorial, like, press this to do this. And, like, it feels organic, and that's the best part about it. And, like, the combat feels strong, and, like, when you're playing as Kratos, like, you feel strong and powerful.
I like the kind of added RPG elements, so I feel like it's almost a natural progression from what we had before, which they kind of slowly started to introduce that a little bit in other games, where, all the games always had the powering up and everything, but they started to kind of introduce more creative items and ththings like that to kind of string together combos and stuff like that. Now it's extended into your item customization, choosing how you want to kind of build Kratos, how you want to, your play style, essentially. I liked that I really have very few criticisms for this game. I like that even in their references to the past story and kind of all the baggage of 6 other games, they trotted that out slowly and well paced. They didn't just immediately jump into like, oh, this is what happened, or previously on God of War. And, it's slow. We knew it was coming. We as fans knew there was going to be something coming that we're going to have. There's got to be some reference to this eventually. When are they going to talk about this? I kept kind of thinking that one. Okay, when are we going to talk about the impact of this or this that happened before?
And really, the best way this can be explained is like there are 2 kinds of players who can play this game. If you played all the God of War games like we have, and you know of all this lore and the history, when you play the game, you're pretty much Kratos. You know everything that has happened, why he is the way he is, and everything like that. But if you've never played a God of War game, ever, and this is your first one in, you can actually jump into this game without ever knowing or playing the past games. And then if you're Atreus. You're actually understanding like Atreus, and Atreus is going like, why is he like this? Why is he always so mad? What's going on?
I never thought of that comparison. I like that. Yeah.
Think about it like that. Like if you and I, we're pretty much like Kratos. We know what he's going through. We know like the story. So the story that they're telling, we can see from Kratos. Of course, the core of the story is the bond between father and son, between Kratos and Atreus. But if you're a newcomer, that's the best part, is that, like, there's one part in the game that is the hypest moment in the whole game. I will not spoil it because it is absolutely worth it. But if you're like me, like you and me, that was hype for us. But if you're new, you're like, oh, what is...
It's something that's mysterious.
It's mysterious and intriguing. Yeah. So you don't need to know about all the past lore and everything from before. It's very, very good and very, very intriguing. So when you finish the story and the people have a very, very rough understanding of Norse mythology because of Thor, the Marvel hero Thor, and Loki and stuff like that. Now it definitely delves way deeper into Norse mythology and that kind of stuff.
And it plays with it in interesting ways, just like it did with Greek mythology.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of realizing it's kind of fascinating. Like I said, I only had 4 games on my list, but 2 of those are actually exclusives. It's just kind of weird for me because I'm usually not someone that puts much stock in exclusive games. But definitely, this is... I'd say God of War, at least for me, and I think for a lot of people, is a reason to own a PlayStation.
Oh, I agree.
I mean, you know, looking at other things, I mean, there's some other decent, serviceable games. Even Shadow of the Colossus, I mean, that was a classic, but I mean, let's be honest, you can play that. You can play that on PS2 if you really wanted to, or probably emulate it now at this point. It's so old. But God of War 2018, that's a reason to. I'm hesitant to say a reason to buy a system by itself. No one game I think is kind of worth buying a system, I would say, for. But I would say it's a strong, compelling part of that sales pitch.
I mean, I would probably say yes. I would say, like, you know, it, like, God of War is the reason to buy a PS4. I would definitely say that. Like, if, you know, like, for me, I'm a PlayStation guy, but I do have an Xbox One. And I bought, you know, I have an Xbox One in order to play their exclusives like Cuphead and Sunset Overdrive and Halo. Like, I would definitely say God of War is...
Well, exclusive.
Besides the point.
At least, well, I mean, it's a true reason to own a PS4 because that's the only way you can theoretically play it.
But I do have one other game that also talks about its history. The last game that is this is number 6 for me because we have 4 from you, 5 from me. There's one more game. It is Spyro: The Reignited Trilogy. Spyro: The Reignited Trilogy. Again, we love our classic games. We love Crash. We love Medieval. This is another one, and Spyro: Reignited Trilogy. Honestly, I played through that game, and when it just brought me back to my childhood. For me, when I was growing up, I loved Crash, and you know, you were either Spyro or Crash Bandicoot. For me, Spyro. Spyro was my platformer that I adored, and like that's mine. And really, when I started playing Spyro 1, Spyro 2, and Spyro 3, just like it brought me back to my old childhood, and it's such an easy game to pick up. Even if you've never played a platformer before, you never played, you know, Spyro back in the day on a PS1 because you weren't around that time, or you had an N64, or you know, whatever.
It holds up pretty well, and really, it's a genre. I mean, platformers is a genre that we don't really see much outside of Nintendo, and yeah, I mean, it's. I picked up Spyro Reignited as well too. I haven't touched it just yet. I was the Crash kid.
Yeah.
You know, I played through Crash 1 through 3 several times. I adored those games, and my treat came last year with Insane Trilogy.
Yep.
And now I'm glad that they came with Spyro.
No, and I remember like you and I have talked many times before when you and I would gush over Crash, and I'm like, give me Spyro. If this sells well, Spyro should exist, and now it does, and I'm a happy man. And like it's so much fun. It's just the whole collectathon and like just I will say it is honestly easier to play than Crash from last year.
I remember playing through. I mean, the experience playing through is Crash 1 or Spyro 1. Spyro, the original Spyro is definitely a lot more forgiving in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're both two very different in terms of their genre.
Oh yeah, of course.
They're both platformers theoretically, but one is essentially
one is very linear, where Spyro is kind of an open world platformer. You know,
exactly.
You have a level, and you know there's a starting point and end point, but you can get it has a linearity to it. Like there's really only one way to get to it, but like it feels open. Does that make any sense?
That makes some sense.
Okay. But no, Spyro the Reignited Trilogy is honestly one of those games that really just, like, if you grew up with Spyro or Crash, you remember this game. It's nostalgia, but, like, this is honestly a game that, like, if you have kids, like, if I had kids, I would totally be like, you play this. Play Crash. Play Spyro. This is a fantastic kid-friendly game that I would recommend to everyone.
That's the beauty of them too. Is I mean, for the most part, both series have aged relatively well.
Yeah.
You can make some arguments about Crash 1 maybe not aging so well. But I mean, it's a game. You know, it's a game I know definitely. You know, when I get to that point, I'll play with my kids, and it's an updated way to kind of to reintroduce it to a new generation. And even if you've never touched these games before, you weren't born at the time, or you passed them by, or whatever. I mean, it's still something you could jump into and they're very approachable in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I'd say if you're more of a newbie to kind of the platform genre, I'd say probably go with Spyro over Crash. But
honestly, you can't go wrong with either.
Maybe start with Spyro and then work your way to Crash.
I mean, honestly, really, I don't think they're, as we said before, the two separate games. I honestly like it's really personal preference. For me, I love dragons. Like that's kind of what took me is that like it was the the dragon aspect and like that the magic of this where like Crash was very like it had a magic to it, but it was more sci-fi. You know what I mean? It was more sciencey. I guess it's a little bit odd.
What I like about both of these series is that they have something, and something that Medieval has a lot, which I'm really looking forward to.
Oh yeah.
Is they have this like it's something you don't really see too much anymore, unfortunately, in a lot of games. It's this element of charm to them where they're not meant to be super serious. They're meant to be fun, enjoyable, almost like a cartoon-like experience. Really, the only thing that's kind of almost, I guess you could say similar in some respects to that was, a game almost like Cuphead or something like that, where it's just kind of similar, just like it's just fun and charm and lighthearted, and it's something you don't really see as much anymore.
Yeah,
now every game nowadays has to be ultra serious and grim, and I mean, really, most of what we mentioned on our list was kind of in that vein, essentially. But yeah, no, it's fantastic. I hope the success of Crash and Spyro inspires them to continue with even more.
No, I agree.
Remasters, because they've been doing a fantastic job on these so far. I can't wait for Medieval. That's gonna be fantastic, and I can't wait to see what else they remaster as well too.
Yeah. So to just kind of go back through the list, so that way you guys know what the 10 we have. For me, it was Monster Hunter World, Far Cry 5, Detroit Become Human, Marvel Spider-Man, Red Dead Redemption 2, and Spyro the Reignited Trilogy.
And of course, I came up with a list of 4, because that's all I could come up with. although in hindsight, 2020, I guess I could have put Spyro on there for mine. But I knew that was what you were going to pick anyways. So I of course had Shadow of Colossus.
Yep.
The remaster. Hitman 2.
Yep.
And then I had Fallout 76.
The controversial one.
Controversial choice. And then my completely non-controversial choice of God of War 2018.
Yes. Which those are absolutely, I mean, honestly, those are some interesting choices. And again, these are just our choices. But I would love to hear what choices you guys have. What your game of the year would be. Anything like that. Go ahead and let us know in the comments below. And let us know if you guys are going to watch the Game Awards. Go ahead and press the I above one of our heads. And let us know if you're going to watch the Game Awards this year. But yeah. I know that we didn't really do anything else. This was just pretty much our top 10 list, our pretty much the 10 games that we have for this year. And we will definitely be coming back to this and announcing the game of the year for us. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys. Please go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Like, share, subscribe. Always appreciate that. You can also follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/TheBrotherhoodOfGeeks. And then you can also follow me and the channel on Twitter at DualShockBOG. That's the name of this show, BOG. We also have a Twitch channel now, which we will be live streaming the Game Awards on there, which is twitch.tv/BrotherhoodOfGeeks. Anything else, Spectre?
That's all I got. It was an entertaining year. Like I said, it was kind of difficult for me to come up with a list, but I think some of those in there were just powerhouse of games.
I get you.
So,
anywhere they can follow you, Spectre?
I don't want people following me.
Oh no!
No, I was. I have a Twitter that I occasionally use. It's at symbol Spectre _0451.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching, guys. I'm Brett J. Rasmussen.
And I'm Batman.
You're Batman?
No, I'm Spectre.
There you go. And as always, live to play, play together. Thank you so much, guys. We'll see you next time.